The best way to stand out if you are transitioning to the space sector from another industry is to make it clear that you are an asset in that company, that you are more of an asset to that company than someone who comes from a space background. And in fact, you want to make it clear that that company would be lucky to have hired you. Hi, I'm Lara Forsick. I'm the executive director of space consulting firm Astrolytical, and I'm a space career coach. There is a misconception out there that you cannot get a space job without prior space experience or a space-related degree. And this is simply not the case. All you have to do is look to see the demographics of the workforce to see that it is not the case. There are so many people who have successfully transitioned from another industry to the space industry. In fact, this is seen as pretty common in executive level positions. Think about some of the space CEOs that you know. Think about their backgrounds. Some of them formed their own companies, such as SpaceX and Peter Beck, and they didn't necessarily have a space background. In fact, Peter Beck did not even have a degree when he formed Rocket Lab. Think of some of the people who were chosen as a CEO of a space company that they did not found. The current CEO of Virgin Galactic, for example, came from Disney. He had no space experience. And so thinking about the fact that this is actually very common and accepted when it comes to executives, so why shouldn't you think that just because you don't have a space background, but you have other experience and other expertise, that you can't also make a switch into the space sector? Now, I'm not going to lie, there are some biases out there, some pretty strong biases about hiring people who have space backgrounds. No offense, but it tends to be engineers who are really biased against non-engineers. Myself, I'm a scientist. I have actually seen this firsthand, but you do not have to have a STEM degree. You do not have to have a science, technology, engineering, or mathematics background to work in space. No matter your background, you belong in the space sector, and the space sector absolutely needs you. What you want to do is focus on your transferable skills. These are the skills that you have acquired throughout your education, throughout your career, and they are valuable. You do not want to be applying for an entry-level role for the most part. You want to be saying, I have X experience, and therefore I am this level, and that is where I belong, or even one step above. Think about the fact that you are very valuable in what you have done for your previous employers. Think about the fact that you are very valuable for the training that you've gotten, both in your education and on the job training. Think about the fact that the space sector actually really needs someone with your knowledge and background. Now it's all about the messaging. And this is a bit of an art to craft your messaging in such a way that the space audience understands what you've done and understands what you bring to the table for them. And that is key. What does that space company or organization need? And how do you fulfill that need? And it does not necessarily matter if you have no direct space experience, if you can clearly articulate not only that you fill that need, but you are the best person for them to hire to fill that need. And the way you stand out is by showcasing the fact that your experience is different. The space sector, unfortunately, tends to be very insular, very siloed. And the benefit of having outside expertise, such as yourself, is that you bring in a different perspective and a different set of skills and experiences that other people who have always worked in space have. And I'm myself speaking from experience because I have always worked in the space sector. So I find myself fairly ignorant when I speak about topics outside the space sector. I know my expertise is here, and there's a whole other world of expertise that you can bring to the table for these space organizations and companies that need you. And that is the best way to stand out above the crowd, because if there's 99 aerospace engineering applicants and you're coming in as an engineer from a different field, you're going to stand out. No offense to my aerospace engineering friends. We need you. You're very valuable. Another thing you want to do is speak their language. There are certain terms, certain terminology that is more commonly used in the space sector. You want to do enough reading and enough networking and talking with people to understand how space people talk, what words they use. Perhaps you're using words that describe the same thing but in a different way. You actually want to make sure that your language matches their language. And it's almost a subtle difference there where you are explaining to them that you are an insider. You're not an outsider, you're an insider because you speak their language. And therefore, you're not going to need a lot of time to come up to speed with all the things that are doing that are space related because you're already on the ball with the language and you're able to articulate that to the space audience. And of course, there's practical reasons like you want to get through the algorithm that's scanning your resume and looking for certain keywords. So make sure that you use those specific keywords in the job posting and making sure that you use that exact same language where applicable. Now, I've been talking about engineers a lot because that's probably the smoothest path through the space sector. If you are an engineer in another industry, you will likely have very little problems transitioning to the space sector as long as you are able to craft that messaging and clearly articulate how you belong in that space-related role. For example, one of my previous clients, Travis, he had a background in civil engineering inspections, in utilities, in airports, and that's where he was working when he came to me. He had this background in airports and he really wanted to work in space. And so we worked together and he was able to fairly easily transition to a business development role in a small space company. Because when you have that background in engineering or any technical background, it is really easy to say, I have this education, I have this experience, it is highly technical, I'm able to apply what I've learned in my previous jobs to the space sector. Even if you're not transitioning to engineering, if you're transitioning to business development or some other related role. Business and finance tends to be another area that's fairly smooth sailing simply because the aerospace industry is composed of businesses and all businesses need to have that business and financial expertise to run effectively. One of my previous clients, Esteban, he came from a finance background in another field and he was able to successfully transition to corporate development for a large aerospace contractor doing mergers, acquisitions, investments, that kind of thing. Because all businesses need people who have that business or financial expertise. And the space sector is no different. You do not need a technical background to work in space. I want to highlight communications as another area where it's fairly simple to transition. I had a client, Parker, who came from political communications, no expertise in space, but we worked together and he was able to successfully transition to do communications and communication strategy for a fairly large aerospace company. Another one of my recent clients who came from a journalism background, he had slight experience in space in that he was writing a book about space, but he'd never formally done space journalism. He was able to transition to do space journalism. And in fact, I read a piece by him just today. So congratulations again, David. If you are finding this content helpful so far, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to this channel. I put a lot of work into this and I know that you're going to get a lot out of this channel if you continue to watch. So thank you so much. There are times that it makes sense for you to get another degree or to undergo some kind of training or to get a credential before you apply to a space-related role. If you are wanting to be an engineer or a scientist or other highly skilled position, you need some kind of relevant background. And if you don't have that relevant background, then going back to school or getting some kind of certification or training really makes sense. Most of my clients do not need this, by the way, but there are some of my clients that choose to go back to school or are already going back to school when they come to me. For example, my client Terry, who came from a successful real estate background. He came to me when he was doing a master's degree in aerospace science. He's now doing his PhD in aerospace and he does so many things I lose track. He does astronomy research, he does analog astronaut research, he started his own company having to do with space education and research. He is just doing all the things. Sometimes it really does benefit people to go back to school to get that extra training, but also to network with your professors, network with guest lecturers, network with all the people who it makes sense for you to get to know. It also gives you that opportunity to get involved in space-related projects. Now, you can do this without going back to school, but within a university environment, it's a lot easier to get involved in space-related projects, space-related organizations and clubs, or even space-related research under a professor. The most important way that you stand out as you're applying for space jobs, as you're trying to get into the space sector, is networking. Networking is how people get to know you. Networking is how they get to know who you are and what you do and what you're capable of doing and what you want to do in the future. Networking is how you get to know who those people are and what they're working on. And networking is the way that people can keep you in mind when there is a job posting or when there is an opportunity. The sheer number of jobs that are gotten through networking is just unbelievable. So this is your key to success. I have a client right now who is unbelievably good at networking. I still don't really know how he is this good. He is a mechanical engineer with no space background, but he's interested in transitioning to space. He just has this way of connecting with people that they immediately latch onto him and want to talk to him and are very interested in hiring him. And the secret to his success is to be very targeted and clear. He knows what he wants. He goes after the very few companies that meet his criteria, and he talks to the people within those companies, anybody that he can talk with, but especially the executives and the leadership. And he's targeting very small startups, so it's fairly easy for him to do that. And he has startup experience and he has investment and fundraising experience. And so he has that way of showcasing what he can do for that company, even though he has no space related experience. So being very targeted and very articulate articulate at what you bring to the table for that company can really give you a leg up when you're networking. If you are liking this content, I have another video for you. I'm going to link it above. It has more details about how to transition from another industry to the space sector, even if you have no prior space experience. So check that video out next. And if I can help you in your space career journey, please reach out to me at lauraforsick.com.